It's a terrifying case, one that has haunted the small town of Clinton, Missouri for more than 3 decades. Abducted while on a call with her fiance just 7 blocks away, Angela Hammond was using a phone booth in this parking lot when a man in a suspicious truck pulled up. He had been circling the block, going round and round, circling Angela like a shark, making her uncomfortable and prompting her to describe her abductor and his vehicle in the minutes before her kidnapping. Her fiance listened as everything happened and raced to the scene as fast as he could. He followed the truck with his abducted fiance inside, out of town as far as his truck could make it. But his transmission failed, and even though he went directly to police with Angela's first-hand description of her abductor, no one has been officially named as a suspect in her abduction ever. Despite multiple witness accounts of the man's vehicle, the suspicious truck has never been found or identified. And Angela Hammond? Angela Hammond vanished that night. She was never seen or heard from again. 30 years later, law enforcement chose to share an early theory from their investigation, a wild tip from the original case file, one that may finally have confirmation, if only the witness would come forward. Someone knows what happened to Angela Hammond. "20-year-old Angela Hammond had just moved into her own place, a mobile home that wasn't yet fitted with a landline. And because this was 1991, before everyone had cell phones, Angela stopped at the phone booths in this parking lot to call her fiance, Rob Schaefer, and tell him about her plans. That evening, Angela's best friend, Kyla Engeman, had come back to town, and after attending a barbecue at Angela's mom's house, the two girls had gone cruising around the town square. It was just a Thursday night in April, but Angela had the night off work, and she and Kyla were enjoying goofing around. They split up around 11:15, with Kyla heading home. Angela had previously talked about meeting up with Rob that night after he had finished babysitting his little brother, but Angela decided that she was tired and wanted to go home and take a bath before heading to bed. While she spoke on the payphone in the food barn parking lot, she noticed a strange vehicle circling the block. She felt like the driver was watching her. She told Rob that the truck looked sort of like his, but older, more beat up, and two-toned. It was a green pickup truck, and this one had a mural in the rear window that showed a fish jumping out of the water. "He's probably going to come and get me," Angela joked at first. But when the truck circled the block the next time, he pulled into the lot and parked next to her. "Uh-oh, Rob, the truck pulled in, and he's getting out of the truck," she narrated for him. "What's the man look like?" Rob asked. She said that he had dark hair, was wearing glasses, and dirty overalls. Rob asked about a license plate on the truck, but Angela said that there wasn't a plate on the front. Rob later described to producers with Unsolved Mysteries in detail what happened next, saying, quote, "He used the phone next to her, got back in his truck, and looked at something with a flashlight. She described the flashlight to me over the phone. He was looking for something. I had him ask her if he needed to use the phone. Maybe the other phone was broken. And he said no, he'd try again in a minute. Then we just talked about other things. We weren't too worried about it. And that's when I heard her scream on the phone. I heard her scream. The only thing that went through my mind was getting up there and finding out what the hell was going on. I dropped the phone and I ran out of the house. I didn't hang the phone back up. I just headed up there." End quote. Rob had been babysitting his little brother just 7 blocks away, directly south on this road, 2nd Street. Panicked, he raced to his truck. Rob himself drove a 1973 green Ford pickup truck. As Rob races up 2nd Street, he sees what looks like a yellow truck heading south, this way. Somebody yelled out the window, "Robbie!" "That's how I knew it was them," he said. They were on this street, near this intersection, and in the heat of the moment, Rob makes a split decision and throws his truck in reverse. He flips it around and proceeds to chase the old truck. eventually turning right. He follows the truck through town for nearly a mile before his own truck breaks down. Unfortunately, the quick switch into reverse had damaged the vehicle's transmission. In horror, Rob watched the truck with Angela inside speed off, its brake lights disappearing into the dark night of the road ahead. Rob gets out of his truck and flags down the first person he sees. It's a car, a silver Thunderbird, driven by Dorothy Skinner, a local woman heading home after picking up a late-night snack from Hardee's. Concerned but skeptical of Rob's story, Dorothy declines to chase after the truck like Rob asks, but she does drive him to the police station. The truck, with Angela inside, gets away. Angela Hammond was a fun and outgoing 20-year-old known to her friends and family as Ange or Angie. She was described as easygoing, mature, stubborn, and independent. Her mother, Marcia, said that Angie liked clothing and heavy metal music, and that she didn't give a darn what people thought about her. Her friend Kyla Engelman called her a die-hard partier and a flirt, one who had been her best friend since 4th grade. Angela loved to have fun. Born in the Kansas City area, Angie moved to Clinton, Missouri when she was a child. Her parents had separated, and when Angie was 9 years old, her mother married her stepfather, Donald Cook. Angie had 5 half-siblings. Her dad, Chris, remarried her stepmother, Kathy, and they lived together in Olathe, Kansas, with their 4 children. Angie grew up with her mom and Donald, who together had a son, Angie's half-brother, Zachary. After graduating high school, Angela had attended Central Missouri State University in Warrensburg for a year and a half before dropping out. She returned to Clinton and got a job as a night computer operator at the Union State Bank. Back in Clinton, she reconnected with Rob Schaefer. Rob was a well-liked athlete, still completing his last year in high school. That January, Rob had proposed and promised to always take care of her. Angela was 4 months pregnant and due to give birth to their child on September 2nd. And he had just watched her abductor speed away. Rob and his ride went straight to the police, who went directly to the grocery store parking lot. Angela's red '87 Mustang was still there. Her purse was still on the seat. The only things missing from the car were Angela, her driver's license, and her car keys. Clinton, Missouri is a small town of about 8,600 people, and in 1991 there were several officers, but only one detective working at the Clinton Police Department, Detective Damon Parsons. Years later, when reflecting on Angela's case, Detective Parsons said, "There is not a day, not an hour that goes by that I don't think about it." Initially, authorities believed that they would find Angela quickly, abandoned somewhere along a roadside. But a search of all the roads leading out of town turned up nothing, as did their expanded search of gravel drives, creek beds, old wells, and barns. As soon as he learned of her abduction, her father, Chris Hammond, dropped everything in Olathe and came to Clinton to look for his daughter. That weekend, he and 250 civilian volunteers, including many of Angela's friends and family, searched woods and fields throughout Clinton and Henry counties. Landowners were asked to search their own properties, but no trace of Angela could be found. In such a small town, rumors started to spread almost immediately. In the beginning, many people felt that the story of Rob's transmission failing was both convenient and suspicious. He was brought in for questioning and spent 5 hours with FBI interrogators. They also brought in Angela's ex-boyfriend, Bill Barker. Angela had actually called Bill first that evening and asked him to meet her at her trailer at 12:30 that night, which honestly does sound a little suspicious when you realize that her next call was to cancel her plans with Rob, her fiance and baby daddy. She reportedly told Rob that she was going to take a bath and read a book before bed, but this was after inviting her ex Bill over. For what it's worth, everyone seems to think that Angela was totally committed to Rob, and her mother believed that Angela was only planning to meet Bill to return a class ring that they had previously exchanged while dating. However, these issues gave investigators pause and raised suspicions regarding both men. At one point, during an official interview, they repeatedly implied that Rob and Bill had worked together to abduct Angie. Police gave both young men polygraphs, which they reportedly passed. Eventually, they are both cleared through corroborating phone records and additional witness testimony. Almost immediately, police wondered if Angela's case could be connected to two other recent abductions. And on Tuesday, April 9th, local law enforcement met with the FBI and the Missouri State Patrol to discuss the possibility. All three abductions had occurred just outside of a store, and all three were within an 80-mile radius. Less than 3 months earlier, on January 19th, 42-year-old Trudy Darby had been working at the K&D convenience store in Max Creek, Missouri, when she noticed a suspicious man loitering outside. She called her son Waylon around 10 p.m. to tell him about the man, and he advised that she close up and wait for him. Waylon rushed to the store, arriving within 5 minutes, but by the time he got there, Trudy was gone, and all of the cash was missing from the register drawers. Her nude body was recovered just 2 days later in a river approximately 10 miles from the convenience store where she worked. She had been shot twice in the head. Then, on the night of February 27th, 30-year-old Cheryl Ann Kenny disappeared while closing up the Quality convenience store in Nevada, Missouri. Witnesses had seen a heavy-set man with a beard and a mustache sitting in a pickup truck near her store. Cheryl was never seen again. Just a few weeks later, Angela was abducted. People were scared, and several officials speculated publicly that the abductions could be related and a serial killer haunting central Missouri. The similarities with the other cases weren't their only lead. Police had other lines of inquiry to follow. According to Detective Parsons, the Missouri State Highway Patrol assisted with a computer search on all registered vehicles, returning a list of 1,600 trucks, which they systematically checked for color and for murals in the back window. One promising lead surfaced, a pickup truck that matched the description of the one that took off with Angela. But the man who owned the truck had a solid alibi. He had been under arrest in California on the night of Angela's disappearance. Frustrated and running out of options, 11 days into the investigation, authorities in Clinton decide to call in more assistance. A squad of detectives from 15 Missouri counties called the Rural Major Case Squad pooled their resources to take on Angela's case. When asked about their investigation, squad spokesman and Lexington Police Chief Tom Van Zandt said, quote, "This is a strange case. I've never seen one like it." The squad was hopeful that they could track down evidence of Angela's whereabouts. But after a full week with no substantial findings, they all returned home, back to work in their own jurisdictions. Angela's friends and family printed up missing posters with Angela's picture, taping them to windows and tacking them up on bulletin boards inside local businesses all across Clinton. Small-town rumors spread, people saying that Angela ran away or that Rob was involved in her disappearance. But soon, several witnesses came forward to support Rob's account of events. First, Dorothy Skinner, the woman who had picked up Rob when his transmission failed. She had driven by the food barn on her way to Hardee's and had seen Angela's red Ford Mustang in the parking lot, facing the phone booths. Dorothy also recalled seeing a green pickup truck parked at an angle facing Angela's car. Dorothy remembered that there was damage to the truck's front left fender and recalled that the truck's headlights were on. However, as she had been driving past quickly, Dorothy didn't recall seeing any people near the vehicles in the food barn parking lot. Next, two teens named Michelle and Jennifer came forward. They told authorities that they had pulled into the food barn parking lot after mistakenly believing that Angela was a friend of theirs. They had pulled up alongside the abductor's truck and seen the man, who they described as white, with a medium build, a mustache, and a dark baseball cap. As soon as Michelle and Jennifer stopped their car, they could see that Angela was not the friend that they were expecting. Disappointed, they backed out of the parking spot, but not before realizing that they had seen the abductor's truck just 2 nights before. Apparently, the driver of the truck had been behaving suspiciously, driving slowly through a nearby town, Windsor. He had gone so slow that the girls had gotten stuck behind him in traffic, and they had spent a considerable amount of time waiting to pass. This had given them ample time to notice the fish seen in the back of the truck's window. Windsor is just about a 20-minute drive northeast of Clinton. When the witnesses relayed this information to police, authorities asked Rob about the testimony of the 2 girls, and he said he didn't remember Angela mentioning their arrival. Perhaps she was already focused on the other man, or maybe she hadn't mentioned it as she hadn't yet felt endangered. Either way, it seems authorities used the descriptions of the driver to form a sketch of the abductor. But to be honest, it's one of the stranger suspect sketches that I've ever seen. Now, from the very start, there is some conflicting information reported regarding what this guy looked like. One newspaper article calls him a bearded man in coveralls. Another report says that he was wearing glasses, while a third mentions no glasses but has him wearing a dark-colored baseball cap. The Sedalia Democrat said that Angela told Rob that the man had a mustache, while the Associated Press calls him a white male between 20 and 35 years old with dark collar-length hair. This is the picture of the suspect sketch attached to Angela's Charlie Project page. The man in this sketch doesn't have any facial hair. He has no glasses or cap. I struggled to find the origin of this sketch. I couldn't find it in any of the early reporting or in the Unsolved Mysteries episode, and I almost didn't share it with you. But it felt wrong not to, so here it is, I guess with a caveat. Regardless, the corroborating testimony from Dorothy and the 2 teens refocused law enforcement's efforts on finding the truck. They narrowed down the possible years of manufacture to a 1968 to 1970 model Ford. Additionally, officials shared that they now believed that the license plate may have contained the letters X and Y. Clinton Police Chief Bob Pattison said, "Never in my career have we had as good a description of a vehicle and have not found it." But find it, they did not. The bank where Angela had worked, together with her friends and family, raised $16,000 in reward money for information about Angela's whereabouts. But despite many leads, nothing panned out. Angela's father returned home to Olathe without any news of his daughter. That June, Rob left for Virginia to train for the National Guard. And that September, the due date for their baby's arrival came and went. That October, Canadian native Russell Smith visited relatives in Missouri and learned about Angela's disappearance. When he saw her photo, he was convinced that he had seen Angela at a drugstore in Manitoba a month earlier. However, despite what police called excellent cooperation from Canadian authorities, no trace of Angela could be found 900 miles away in Canada. If Angela had carried her baby to term, she would have given birth before Russell had seen her, so Canadian officials visited all of the hospitals and baby stores in the area to see if any staff members had remembered seeing her, but no one recognized her. "You don't really deal with it, you just go on," her father Chris Hammond said that fall. "There's not an hour that goes by that you don't think about it. It's a parent's worst nightmare." Rob was having a difficult time, too. He still often thought of that night in April, saying, "The beginning is the hardest because you know you were close enough to get him, but you just didn't get the job done. And you still wake up nights wondering where she's at, wondering what happened, wondering if anybody is still looking. You're just wondering all the time." There was a lot of excitement when Unsolved Mysteries got involved. They filmed a reenactment on site in the fall of 1991. It aired in early 1992, giving Angela's case national attention and bringing in hundreds of new tips, essentially reopening the investigation. Police suddenly had new leads to follow up on. But over the course of years, many leads were rolled out. Eventually, though, progress was made in another case, in the case of the murder of Trudy Darby. For a long time, many people had suspected that Trudy's death was connected to Angela's disappearance. So when there was an arrest in Trudy's case, everyone paid attention. Jess Rush had been just 15 years old at the time of Trudy's murder. So when he started telling people about his involvement in her death, most didn't believe him. But one girlfriend and one neighbor did. And when they went to police decided to question him. At first, Jess denied participating in the crime, but soon admitted that he and two others were responsible for Trudy's murder. He said that robbery had been the motive and that Trudy had been held in a local barn before being raped, beaten, and shot in the head. While in jail awaiting trial, he wrote quite a few letters bragging about other crimes that he had committed. Jess Rush did some absolutely despicable things and then wrote some absolutely despicable things as well. So I'm only going to read to you a very small section of one of his letters. He wrote, quote, "The only smart thing we did was have Marshall's brother Greg burn the barn. Otherwise, the motherfuckers would have a lot more on us. I'm glad they don't know everything else we did, or I'd be on death row." The horrific content of these letters made people wonder if he was involved with crimes against Cheryl Ann Kenny or Angela Hammond. But without any physical evidence tying the men to any other crimes, nothing could be done. For many years, many people, including some in Angela's family, believed that Jess Rush was responsible for Angela's kidnapping. Eventually, however, police are able to rule Jess Rush and his associates out as being involved in Angela's disappearance. Many years passed with no new news in Angela's case. In 2009, 18 years after Angela vanished, the Clinton Police Department announced that they hoped that renewed public attention would provide answers as to Angela's fate. While for some time the case had gone quiet, recently leads had started to become more frequent. Clinton Police Sergeant Paul Abbott contrasted the present state of the investigation with the past few years, saying, "Now it's not uncommon for us to get 2 or 3 new and different leads on this case every single week." Authorities were also hopeful that a break in the case could be made due to advancements in DNA technology. While the sergeant did not elaborate on what DNA evidence might exist, they did say that several items were preserved and being processed at the time. The sergeant made it clear that Angela's fiance Rob had been investigated extensively and ruled out as a suspect, and he communicated that they no longer believed that Angela's case was tied to the cases of Trudy Darby or Cheryl Ann Kenny. Over the years, several other killers had been looked at as possible suspects in Angela's case. First, Kenneth McDuff, a serial killer who had been convicted of killing Colleen Reed just 60 miles north in Kansas City a year after Angela was abducted. And second, Larry Dwayne Hall, a convicted kidnapper and suspected serial killer who nabbed girls and young women while traveling nationally for Civil War reenactments during the 80s and early 90s. However, neither man has been conclusively tied to Angela's case through DNA or otherwise. 12 more years passed until another update would be made in Angela's case. In 2021, authorities shared a theory that they had been working since the very beginning. On the 30th anniversary of Angela's abduction, law enforcement shared with the media this threatening letter. It was addressed to a police informant by the number assigned to protect his identity in a pending narcotics case. The letter threatened the informant's daughter, a young woman named Angela, who had recently moved to Clinton, Missouri, and apparently shared similar physical characteristics with Angela Hammond. The letter had been postmarked April 4th, 1991, the same day that Angela Hammond went missing. A copy of the letter had been shared with police early on in the investigation, but investigators had struggled to connect it with the green truck seen by witnesses that night, so it had been set aside. Could Angela have been a victim of mistaken identity? Nabbed because she was believed to be the daughter of an informant in a Lake of the Ozarks drug bust? Police said that even though the idea seemed incredible, they had come across additional information that lent credibility to it. Someone had recently called in an anonymous tip concerning the mistaken identity theory and had given them 2 names, but no way to contact them back. Authorities were hopeful that this person would call police again so that they could speak with them. Could this caller hold the key to answers in Angela's case? One witness who briefly decided to reach out to authorities? 4 more years have passed since police revealed the letter. What has become of the anonymous caller? Law enforcement additionally asked for new tips and asked for anyone that might know anything about the disappearance of Angela Hammond to call them with information. When she was last seen, she was wearing a white shirt with black spots, black pants, and white tennis shoes. Angela was 4 months pregnant, 5 feet tall, 140 pounds, with brown eyes and light brown